Welcome! There's a recent news story that's really put a spotlight on financial reporting, and today we're going to use it as a powerful case study to explore the absolutely critical role that internal audit plays in protecting a company's integrity.
But look, before we dive in, I have to be really clear about something. Our goal here is purely educational. We're taking insights from a public report in Live Mint from September 5th, 2025, just to help us all get better at our jobs. This isn't about criticizing anyone, it's a learning opportunity for all of us in the field.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the initial red flag, then we'll break down the specific discrepancies, and really talk about why these controls are so important. After that, we'll shift gears to how we can be more strategic, especially with Treasury audits, and what this all means for our evolving role as auditors. Let's get into it.
All right, first things first. A statutory auditor's report, it's really the bedrock of corporate governance. So when an auditor issues anything other than a clean opinion, it's a massive signal that we, as professionals, have to sit up and pay very close attention.
So what in the world is a qualified opinion? Well, think of it this way. It's the auditor saying, hey, for the most part, things here are presented fairly. But there is one specific area that we have a material problem with. So in this case, when BSR & Co. LLP issued one for Ola Electric Technologies, it was a formal way of saying, we have a significant concern here that you need to know about. And this quote from the report, well, it gets right to the heart of the issue. A failure in a really fundamental control, physically verifying your inventory. I mean, for a manufacturing company, inventory is one of your biggest assets. A weakness like this is a huge deal.
Okay, so let's move from the general to the specific. How did this weakness actually manifest? Let's look at the numbers, because the numbers tell a really interesting story.
And this wasn't just a one-off error. The auditor found 19 separate instances during the year where what the company had in its own books didn't match what it was reporting to its lenders. 19. That points to a systemic breakdown, not just an isolated clerical error.
And this table right here makes the problem crystal clear. Look at this. For the exact same time periods, the company was reporting two different inventory values to two different lenders. I mean, you can't have two versions of the truth. This immediately raises some serious questions about the integrity of the data.
And the problem actually went even deeper than that. It wasn't just conflicting reports between different banks. There were also these pretty big differences between the company's own internal books and the numbers they were sending out to secure financing. We're talking about a significant gap in inventory reported to Axis Bank and in receivables reported to Yes Bank.
So, this is the big question, right? Why does any of this matter so much? It's not just an accounting technicality. The consequences of weak controls like this create a dangerous ripple effect that can wash over the entire business.
When your controls fail, the obvious risk is getting your financials wrong. But it's so much more than that. You start to erode trust with the very people who fuel your business, your lenders and investors. Suddenly your valuation is in question. And maybe worst of all, your own leadership team might be making huge strategic decisions based on faulty data. It's a cascade of really bad outcomes. And this insight from Company Secretary Gaurav Pingle really hits the nail on the head. For a company that's in a rapid growth phase, strong controls aren't just bureaucratic red tape. They're the absolute foundation that supports sustainable growth and keeps your financial partners confident. Okay, now this is where we turn the lens on ourselves. For us as internal auditors, this case is a perfect opportunity to step back and rethink our approach. And I want to talk specifically about the Treasury function. For way too long, the Treasury audit has been seen as a simple box-ticking exercise. Did the bank accounts reconcile? Check. We're done. That's just not good enough anymore. We have to elevate our role from just verifying the numbers to really questioning the strategy behind those numbers. So here's a simple but really powerful framework for a modern Treasury audit. First, we need to be scrutinizing every line of our loan covenants. Second, we have to verify that the data we're sending out is consistent across all stakeholders. Third, we need to assess if our financing strategy actually aligns with the company's stated risk appetite. And finally, we have to have the courage to challenge the strategic assumptions driving it all.
This is a fundamental question we have to start asking. Are we signing up for loan agreements with reporting conditions that our current systems just aren't built to handle? Because that kind of misalignment is a recipe for exactly the kind of discrepancies we've been talking about.
And here's another one. Does the complexity and the riskiness of the loans we're taking on actually match the level of risk the board has formally agreed to accept? As auditors, we're in the perfect position to provide real assurance on that critical link between strategy and execution.
And this right here, this is probably the most direct lesson from this whole case. Do we have one and only one source of truth for our financial data? Or are we operating with multiple, conflicting versions depending on who's asking? Our job is to make sure it's the former.
You know, everything we've talked about really points to a fundamental and, frankly, exciting shift in the role and responsibility of internal audit. We're moving from being the watchdog to being a true strategic partner.
At the end of the day, we have a choice. We can be the traditional auditor, the one on the left, seen as a cost center, focused on the past, just checking boxes. Or we can be the strategic auditor on the right, forward-looking, focused on future risk, a true value protector who brings critical insight to the business. The entire future of our profession lies on the right side of this slide.
So, as we wrap this up, let's just boil it down to the essentials. What do we need to take away from this? First, internal audit has to be a strategic partner. Second, strong financial controls are the absolute bedrock of sustainable growth. Third, consistency and accuracy in external reporting are completely non-negotiable. And finally, our real value comes from asking why, not just verifying what.
So, I'll leave you with this one last thought to take back to your own team. I want you to take a hard, honest look at your function. Is it perceived as a cost center or as an indispensable value protector? And what are you going to do tomorrow to start shifting that perception?